not all families are the same size, and this does not benefit everybody. So these are what we call the Cadillac of your home. And if you're going to be putting in a tankless water heater, it is usually for a home that's got a large family.
This is the Check-A-Pro Radio Show. Check-A-Pro Joe has assembled a team of pre-qualified home service contractors to bring you the latest in services, products, and techniques. Now, here's your host, the man with a hard hat and tool belt, Check-A-Pro Joe.
Years ago here in our country, there was really only one way to heat your water besides boiling it on the stove, and that is with what's called a tank water heater. They're generally white, and they're 30, 40, 50 gallons, and they hold water that heats up and it supplies hot water. Years ago in Europe, they started to experiment with something called Tankless, and it's come to the U.S., and we've had it here probably for 20 years, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. So I wanted to ask Bob Mueller about the differences between the old tanks and the new tankless water heaters. He's from Personal Plumbing. Bob, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. Hey, thanks for having me, and that's a great question. Thanks for having that question.
Yeah, so years ago, in Europe, they started with this, and it finally came over here to North America, and it's becoming more and more popular. Why should someone get into the newer technology versus the older tank?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And of course, I always say that, whenever you're deciding on a tankless over a tank water heater, you really got to determine what's best for your family. And of course, not all families are the same size, and this does not benefit everybody. So these are what we call the Cadillac of your home. And if you're going to be putting in a tankless water heater, it is usually for a home that's got a large family and you've been running out of hot water. So this is the first question I always ask my clients is, are you currently running out of hot water? And if you are, you really only have one other option if you're going to go back to a tank water heater, which is put in a bigger tank. But if that's not an option for you, then really your only option at that point is to go to what we call an on-demand tankless water heater, which doesn't mean you're going to get instantaneous hot water. It means that it gives you and delivers hot water unlimited on demand, as long as that is sized appropriately for your house. So not all people are going to be best candidates for a tankless water heater because they are expensive. For the upfront cost of it, and they do need to be maintained. So, and you really got to have a qualified person to know how to work on these water heaters. They're not the same as your tank water heaters. So a lot of differences, but the first question you should just ask yourself, are you currently running out of hot water? And then we can get into more specifics of what would be best for you.
And I do know there's some other great advantages. They take up less space. They can often be installed on the exterior of the home as well. And so there's just a lot of options, but you have to have the right fuel source for it and so forth. It's become a lot easier, though, over the past few years, because years ago they were very strict on the amount of gas if you're using gas to fire it.
Yes, that's correct. And of course, it's not, energy savings isn't always the biggest reason for doing these, because when you're going from a 30 or 40 gallon water heater, even a 50 gallon water heater, and you're using a 40 or 50,000 BTU source of water, and then you're taking it to 199,000 BTUs from a tankless water heater, and you got that thing firing all day long, your 199,000 BTUs is using a lot of fuel. So sometimes you're not really saving energy. So you don't think that you're saving energy, just, it's really going to be determined based on the size of your home and how much water consumption you're using. It can be an energy saver depending on if you're a smaller home, you're not using a lot of hot water.
Bob, thank you so much. Bob Mueller from Personal Plumbing. All of his contact information is in the description of this podcast.
Thank you, Joe.
Check-A-Pro is your local source for pre-qualified contractors. Stay tuned for more of the Check-A-Pro Radio Show.